Shalom, Yashala, Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushua, Ba'ashem, Rakah, Quadash. It's Kalo Yahweh here of the Israelite Calvary. And I'm not going to make this too long. All right. Reporting on prophecy and news. The hottest, latest thing in the media world and news has been talk of a civil war. All right. There's been talk of a civil war. Texas versus America been making the headlines. And I got some articles I'm going to read. And I'm going to be as detailed, precise, edifying, efficient as I can be, so that he that runneth may readeth it. Vice versa. All right. So I got this article I'm going to start off with. Right. And it's called Texas Lieutenant Governor Responds to Question About Possible Civil War. Amid tensions over the use of razor wire on the U.S.-Mexico border in Texas, the state's Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick responded to a question about a possible civil war during an interview on Sunday. Now, the reason why Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick is being mentioned or being interviewed or having the spotlight on him is because he's actually in Texas, and the governor, Greg Abbott, who has really been Joe Biden's administration versus Greg Abbott administration, he took a 10-day trip out of the U.S. and as of Saturday, Sunday, this past weekend, if you will, because this news has been highlighted this past weekend, and today's Wednesday. So there's up-to-dates here and there, but it's been mainly focused on this past weekend. He's been in India. I don't know where he is right now. He could still be in India. No one, what I'm saying? I don't know where he at. But as of, I believe Saturday, Sunday, he was in India. So he could still be in India. But or he could be back. Who knows? But as when this stuff was going on, he wasn't there. And then somehow when he took this trip, tensions started to flare between Texas and the U.S. government. So that's just something to keep in mind, right? So Dan Patrick, since Greg Abbott is not in Texas, or since he wasn't in Texas at the time, the Lieutenant Governor, Dan Patrick, is in charge. He's the head of the state. He's the substitute, right? So it says the state Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick responded to a question about a possible civil war during an interview on Sunday. Right. It says tension between federal and state units in Texas remains after President Joe Biden's administration secured a significant win over Texas Governor Greg Abbott on Monday after the Supreme Court ruled 5-4 to allow the temporary removal of razor wire along the southern border while litigation over the issue proceeds. The court's decision has sparked anger among Republicans who support the measures taken by Abbott and his administration to fight illegal immigration in the state. So what that means is it was Joe Biden's administration versus Greg Abbott administration in a Supreme Court case. And the Supreme Court case ruled in Joe Biden's administration's favor. So the order is for Texas to remove, temporarily remove razor wire along the southern border. Okay. So they have to do this. So let's see how Texas responds, right? It says, meanwhile, Abbott and his administration have held firm on their stance to continue the razor wire policy as the Republican governor claims that Texas has a constitutional right to self-defense. So now, since they lost the Supreme Court case, Texas is refusing the order of the Supreme Court to remove the razor wire along the southern border. All right, the barriers. They're refusing to remove it, and they're claiming self-defense that they have is self-defense, which is their constitutional right. Right? So this is an aggressive approach. Right? It says, and his state was acting on that authority as well as state law to secure the Texas border by using a razor wire. Patrick responded by reiterating that Texas has a constitutional right. So Greg Abbott said this. Now Dan Patrick is coming behind him saying this, right? So now Texas is saying, no, this is our constitutional right. Now keep that in mind, because when you're dealing with stuff like this, when you're dealing with law and order, right, and Constitution, when you're dealing with the Constitution, because the Constitution deals with God-given right, and if Texas believe that their constitutional rights have been thrown out, because Joe Biden has the power to take this thing to the next level, right, which can lead to a standoff, bloodshed, war, Texas will, will succeed from America because the Constitution has been breached, right? And this will indefinitely, repeat this again, this will indefinitely be the start of the Civil War, be a start of a Civil War, and there's no telling how far this thing can go, right? Continue on, this Dan Patrick. It says, he says, we believe constitutionally we are right. We have a right to defend our citizens. We have a right to defend this country. We are just doing our job. These young women and men who serve our National Guard and our department, the DPS, I believe that's Department Patrol, if I'm not mistaken. These are the best of the best. Why would we want to sit anyone down to confront them? All right. I'm gonna do this. Jump to this. This is what he said. Continue on. He said the biggest mistake the Biden administration could make would be confronting law enforcement or our military, our National Guard at our border at this part when we are actually doing the job that the American people want. Patrick told Fox News. All right, check this out. It says concerns over a confrontation came after the Department of Homeland Security asked Texas to stop preventing federal Border Patrol agents access to Eagles Pass, Shelby Park. So there's the Texas Border Patrol and law enforcement at Shelby Park, which the park, Shelby Park is in Eagle Pass, Texas. Eagle Pass is a city called Eagle Pass, located in Texas, to be exact, southwest of San Antonio, Texas, right at the U.S.-Mexico border. So this is where this thing is happening at. I would say about 2 to 3.5 hours west of San Antonio, Texas, to give you an idea where this was happening at. All right. It says a letter from the Department of Homeland Security to Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton last week demanded full access to the park by Friday. However, Paxton rejected the request. So the Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, all right. So you got the whole government of Texas is headstrong right now, man, and they refusing to stand down. Okay, so this is big. So this is talk of a civil war, right? Because basically you have federal Border Patrol agents trying to get access to Shelby Park, but the Texas law enforcement and Texas National Guard, Texas State Guard, and Border Patrol is not are blocking them access to that, because this is where the park is where they have the barriers blocking entry, which the Supreme Court told them to stand down to temporarily remove that, to deconstruct that, right? But Texas is refusing to stand down. They're claiming self-defense constitutional right. right? So that was a very good article to explain what's going on, to have some type of understanding of what's going on, the legal situation, where it's happening at, and the whole ordeal of it. And pretty much it's Texas, which Texas is a red state. It's a Republican state. It's a very, it's a southern state. It's a Confederate state, if you will, man. I mean, these people, they don't like the Israelites, man. They don't like, it's all about white supremacy when according to these red states. So they claim it's self-defense. They're saying that the immigrants that's coming in through the Texas border is invading Texas, and they won't allow it, right? So we're gonna see. I got this article right here. It's called "Texas is Spoiling for a Civil War." It says, as Governor Greg Abbott escalates his border fight with the Biden administration, he is sounding a lot like an old Confederate, right? It said, I'm gonna read this. Despite the legal loss, Abbott was undeterred, right? So Texas, though they lost the Supreme Court ruling, they're not standing down, which is essentially is a complete act of defiance against the U.S. federal government. Which, I mean, you talking about if none other before, now we're on the brink of a civil war, right? I mean, how close can you get? It says, perhaps inspired by the fact that there appears to be at least 4 justices willing to defend Texas' right to go to war with the federal government, Abbott issued a lengthy statement claiming that Texas is under foreign invasion, right? That the Biden administration has felt its federal duty to protect Texas from invasion, and thus Texas has the authority to defend itself through any means. Abbott says Texas has a right to stand its ground, right? And Texas is a stand your ground state, See, man, Texas is a little different. Texas is definitely different, especially when it comes to gun laws, than New York. I mean, good, oh my God, you're talking about complete different worlds. Hey, I tell you this, for you Northerners and you motherfuckers out there on the East Coast, even you West Coasters out there, man, you come to Texas, all right? You come to Texas with that BS, right? And it don't have to be just one demographic of people. You come to Texas with that BS. The suburbs, the rural areas, the inner city, wherever you at, you come with that BS, you will get your issue. Because again, this is a stand your ground state. And what's that song? That song by that rapper. He said, I'm from Texas. Most of that shit he said in that song is true. Everybody out in Texas, they got weapons. They got guns. And it's that type of, and I'll say this, Texas, and not just the size of Texas, big old state of Texas, but Texas is most definitely, I'll put my money on it, Texas is and they showing it, Texas is most definitely willing to take it there. And I'm talking about Civil War talk. They willing to take it there with the U.S. government. I ain't saying they gonna win, but I'm saying they most definitely willing to take it there. And matter of fact, you got that movie, the Purge movie, the last Purge movie, to where you had, it was martial law declared, right? And they was sending the National Guard to all major cities. And one of the major cities was El Paso, Texas. This is where the plot of the movie, at the time of the movie, was taking place. All right, and this time of the movie, towards the end, the plot was taken, or the setting was taking place in El Paso, Texas, because, well, I ain't gonna spoil the movie. I just know, I'm gonna just say the plot was taking part of, the setting of the movie was taking, towards the end of the movie was taking part in El Paso, Texas, and pretty much the militia in that area overthrew the National Guard, man. And the National Guard had to retreat, and that was all over the news that the National Guard is retreating El Paso, Texas. So that was a loss for the U.S. National Guard, man. All right, that was a loss for the President administration, the executive branch as well. That was a loss for the federal government, period. All right, I'm pretty sure they're gonna spend in special operations, but that's after the fact. They lost that to the National Guard, and so that militia of that area took control of the city. And so that was a movie, but they put in these movies preludes to things to come. So that and hey, who knows, man? I can say who knows, man? We're gonna see. All right, I'm gonna jump down. I'm gonna read this. It says, does Biden have the stomach to fight this? Abbott is betting that he doesn't. It's the same bet Jefferson Davis and Robert E. Lee made about Abraham Lincoln. They didn't think they could win the Civil War. They thought the Union wouldn't have the will to stop them. The Confederates were wrong about Lincoln. The Republicans may be right about Biden. So, hey, is Joe Biden Abraham Lincoln in the regeneration? Who knows, man? Yes, hey, we're going to see, man. We're going to see. The scriptures say there's nothing new under the sun. Right? What has happened, the Lord requires it again. Right? So, these things are heating up. Right? These things are heating up. And we're going to get why during this, why is the governor, Greg Abbott, who a main figurehead in this, why he's on vacation. Right? So let's examine this too. It says why Governor Greg Abbott is visiting India. It says Governor Greg Abbott is spending a week in India with business leaders from Austin and around the state to boost trade and investment in Texas. All right, it says why it matters. Abbott, who recently made a trip to Israel, continues to blaze an international trail as he fashions himself as a global leader. Now, that's something to highlight. Let's read it again. It says, Abbott, who recently made a trip to Israel, continues to blaze an international trail, right? Highlight that, international trail, as he fashions himself as a global leader. Global leader. Now, as a U.S. governor, as a governor of a U.S. state, what do you have to do in international affairs? Why are you having interest in international affairs as a U.S. state governor in office? It just doesn't add up. It doesn't line up. It doesn't make sense, right? Unless you plotting, unless you scheming, right? Unless you looking to, and like they say, become your own country. Unless, as the governor of Texas, you're looking to secede from the U.S. government and become your own become your own country, and have support by international affairs, by international countries, right? You're looking to build relationships so you can possibly be backed by international powers, if that makes sense. Now, India is a part of the BRICS alliance. If you don't know what the BRICS alliance is, it's Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and other countries that recently joined this alliance of pretty much. It's an alliance formed against the U.S. currency, which they're making their own currency, or they got their own currency, right? They have their own currency. All right, so it says Abbott began his 10-day trip Friday to meet with the country's government and technology leaders. It's the second time he has traveled to India as governor. Right now, so right when he left, this whole ordeal attention sparked. You see how the chips fall, man. It says I don't have to read that. I can read it. It says the big picture. India holds the gaze of global corporations as they look for new sources of labor and revenue growth outside of China. Right? Actually, don't matter. It says India has already overtaken China as the most populous country in the world and is expected to contribute over 15% of the global GDP growth this year. In Central Texas, people of Indian origin comprise the largest share of international home buyers, according to the Austin Board of Realtors 2022 report, right? Which that's some major as well, right? What are they saying? As the 8th largest economy in the world and home to highly skilled and growing workforce, Texas offers endless opportunities for business expansion and investment from our global partners, Abbott said in a statement. So, that's something to look at. Check this out. It says, in the era of Trump, in which the strongman leaders have held particular appeal, Republicans have found a friend in the right-wing Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Right? And it says a Modi-Trump rally in Houston 2019 attracted as many as 50,000 people. Check this out. Between the lines, Abbott's latest international trips could amid speculation that he could be eyeing higher office. Right? It says, if you are a governor who wishes to run for a president of the United States, and international travel and being treated like a head of state rather than a head of a U.S. state is perhaps in your interest. It says, there's no question that any governor of Texas is thinking big. Rahadis added. Okay, but it says, but Abbott campaign consultant Dave Carney previously shrugged off the possibility of Abbott joining a ticket, telling Aosis in November, zero thought on that, and I doubt that he would consider it even for a minute. So, it's like Abbott ain't looking to, try to get into that U.S. presidential candidate election, but maybe he's looking at something different, man. And another thing about Texas that I want to add, all right, I Googled this. It says, does Texas have the most oil? It says Texas is by far the largest oil producing state in the United States. It says in 2022, Texas produced a total of 1.8 billion barrels, right? So it's February 2024 now, and Texas is still at the top when it comes to oil, natural gas, and oil. So if Texas secedes from the U.S., I mean, you're talking about a major breach in the U.S. government. Okay, but hey, these things happen, and you got movies like Bushwick, all right, and you got movies like Civil War, which is said to come out, okay, this year, in April 12th to be exact, of this year. So, man, these things are happening, man. Right? These things are happening, and we're gonna get some scriptures. We're going to get these scriptures. This is Isaiah chapter 19, verse 2. And I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians. Right now, Isaiah 19, if you don't know, is talking about spiritual Egypt, aka America. And in this context, America is the Egyptians, man. And the Lord is saying that he's going to set the Egyptians against the Egyptians. What does that mean? All right. Same countrymen having conflict. That's called a civil war. We look at the word civil, right? Civil deals with, in law, when we look at civil matters, it's dealing with matters of community. Right? Look at this word civil. Civil. All right, it says relating to ordinary citizens and their concerns as distinct from military or ecclesiastical matters. Right? So more community, more house-wise. Let's look at the definition of civil war, right? Get an understanding of that. It says a war between citizens of the same country, right? So the Lord said in Isaiah 19:2, And I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians, and they shall fight everyone against his brother, and everyone against his neighbor, city against city, and kingdom against kingdom. And that's a civil war, right? When you're dealing with, well, and the Lord's going to have a civil war take place on many different levels. You're going to have a government versus a government, right? A state government versus a national government, which you see that now, Texas versus the U.S., essentially, right? But you're going to have other wars like class wars, when I say class wars, these different classes, you got the millennials, you got Generation X, you got the boomers, you got the Generation Z, right? If you haven't noticed, man, all right, these different generations don't like each other. They got, this generation got something to say about this generation. Well, this generation is blaming this generation for how this is. So you're going to see class wars, right? You're going to see that, man. It says city against city, which is region versus region. People from the West going to be fighting with people with the South. People from the North going to be fighting with people with the East. That's what's, it's going to be different forms of civil war. People, I know people think of a civil war as government versus a government, from a domestic wise, which that is true. But a civil war, by definition, just means domestic warfare, right? Which what this is, Isaiah 19:2. And I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians, and they shall fight everyone against his brother, and everyone against his neighbor, city against city, and kingdom against kingdom. And a civil war, again, is going to be the class war. It's going to be sex wars. It's going to be man versus women. These men is tired of these women, these American women, these proud, stuck-up, puffed-up American women, right? It's going to be in a world of trouble when, again, what are these women going to do when the government, right? That's something, because the civil war, right? When the government is fighting itself, they're not going to have time to, and this is going to lead to what? That's going to be a martial law. It's going to be a total police state. Essentially, it's going to be a total police state until they, quote unquote, get everything under control. And we know they're not going to get everything under control. When that happens, things are going to spun out of chaos. All right. You're going to have the people that you look to enforce the law are going to be military operations, which the military are going to be at war with. You're going to have state military versus federal military. They're going to be at war, right? And then you have different militias and whatnot. So nothing's going to be completely. You're not going to be able to call 911. You know what I'm saying? Like, no, it's going to be totally different. It's going to be a police war type of environment. So even talking about you dealing with these military troops and whatnot, they gonna be in true context, they're gonna be breaking the law, right? Or what, which essentially there ain't gonna be no law. There ain't gonna be no U.S. Constitution on the martial law. So there's gonna be men versus women, essentially sex wars. Hey, you got the class wars, sex wars, civil. Another thing with the class wars, you're dealing with the rich versus the poor, right? Like the famous saying, the poor is going to eat the rich. Well, you're going to see that too, right? Which that can be alluding to a race war, right? Race wars, man. You're talking about race wars, so and race wars, when these race wars pop off, a lot of these these people from these other nations, these international, quote unquote, immigrants, or we said it in that movie, quote unquote, immigrants, or they're gonna be trying to go back to their own land. Let me get that in Isaiah 13. So These are things that's happening in America that you must be aware of. Is Isaiah 13 and 14. And it shall be as the chase roe, and as a sheep that no man taketh up. And Salaki, it says, they shall every man turn to his own people, and flee everyone to his own land. Every one that is found shall be thrust through, and every one that is joined to them shall fall by the sword. Right? So people going to be trying to get back to their own land. So if you from somewhere around the world, you're going to be trying to flee out of America when shit. And you're going to see that. You're going to see people, oh, I got to go. Oh, I'm trying to get to Africa. Or I'm trying to get to Europe. Or I'm trying to get to Asia. Right? Or I'm trying to get to Australia. Back to Australia. Or I'm trying to get back to South America. Or I'm trying to get back to the Caribbeans. Or I'm trying to get back to Mexico. Right? Hey, man. It's coming. Check this out. This is the last one. I'm going to close out. This is 2nd Ezra chapter 15, verse 14. It says, woe to the world and them that dwell therein, for the sword and their destruction draweth nigh. And one people shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands. This is alluding to civil war on all levels. Verse 16, for there shall be sedition among men, right, invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. And you're seeing that with Texas right now against the federal government, right? Because they not standing down, even though there's an order by the Supreme Court for them to stand down. They're not standing down, right? So they're not regarding the kings nor princes, right? Verse 17, a man shall desire to go in a city and shall not be able. And you seeing that, as far as with the people that was trying to enter to the Texas border, they're not able to, right? Verse 18, for because of their pride, the sea shall be troubled, the houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid, right? And a man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, civil war, but shall destroy their houses with the sword and spoil their goods because of the lack of bread and for great tribulation. So sooner or later, America gonna be a war zone, right? America gonna be a war zone, man. And it's gonna be a civil war. It's gonna be the government versus the government. It's gonna be race versus race, right? Sex versus sex, right? Class, rich versus poor. I mean, come on, man. Class versus generation. Okay? These are different civil wars that's going to be taking place in America, man. All right? So, hey, with that, I'm going to close out, giving our praise to Yahweh. Bashim Ashah, Bashim Akakwadash. Shalom, Shalom.